You are standing on the other side of something, and you are not entirely sure when you crossed over. That is the specific quality of this moment. The strange, quiet disorientation of having come through an intense period and finding yourself in the aftermath without quite believing the intensity is actually behind you. You look back at the last 4 weeks and the volume of what moved, what shifted, what released, what arrived, what ended, what began. It is almost too much to hold in one frame. You can barely trace the full arc of it. You are tired in a way that goes beneath ordinary tiredness, in a way that sleep addresses, but does not entirely resolve, in a way that tells you something significant happened in you and not just around you. The people around you may not have seen most of it. The biggest movements of April happened in the interior, in the places where the energy of a month this charged does its deepest work, in the beliefs that shifted without announcement, in the patterns that released without ceremony, in the wounds that came to the surface and found, finally, the light they needed to heal, in the connections that crystallized, in the illusions that burned away, in the you that emerged from the process different in ways that are real, but not yet fully visible in the circumstances of your external life. You made it through. I know that sounds simple. It is not. April was not a simple month. And what you are feeling right now, the tiredness, the slight bewilderment of the aftermath, the not quite believing it's over quality, is completely proportional to what the month actually was. Not a small thing. One of the most energetically significant stretches of time available in this decade. And you moved through every bit of it. Let me tell you what April actually was. Not in the vague, everything is spiritually significant way that can make extraordinary things sound like ordinary ones, but specifically with the full weight of what this month actually contained. Mars conjunct Neptune in Aries arrived and burned through illusions. It created the specific friction of a planet of force meeting the fog of self-deception and emotional attachment to things that were not real. For many of you, that conjunction felt like confrontation with yourself, with a pattern, with a version of a situation that you had been seeing through the flattering light of what you wanted it to be rather than what it actually was. The burning was uncomfortable, and it was necessary. What was burned away was taking up space that genuine things need. Venus sextile Jupiter opened something. One of the rarest and most genuinely favorable transits of the year for love and abundance, creating a window in which what you had built through patience and integrity had the room to be received. For those who were open during that window, something genuinely arrived, a connection, a feeling, a door in a direction that had been closed. Chiron Kazemi brought the wound to the sun's full light, not to reopen it, to finally completely see it. The specific injury around worthiness and identity, and whether you are enough to go after what you want had its moment of direct illumination. And in that illumination, something completed. The wound did not disappear, it stopped governing. Mars conjunct Saturn arrived and removed with precision. What was holding the space needed for what was coming was moved. Not gently. With the specific, Saturn exact force of cosmic law determining that certain arrangements had completed their purpose and needed to be cleared. For some of you, what left felt like loss. The loss was real. What the clearing prepared was realer. Uranus entered Gemini. For the first time in 80 years, the planet of liberation and radical change moved into the sign of communication and connection and human expression. The architecture of what is possible in your relational and creative and communicative life changed permanently in April. Not gradually, fundamentally. The rules changed. New channels opened. Things that could not happen under the old architecture now have a path. Venus hit the karmic nodes. What had been building in silence, through the patience, through the staying open, through every private choice of integrity and self-worth, was delivered. The love account was settled. What was earned was received. 30 days. All of that in 30 days. Nothing that happened to you in April was random. I want to say that as clearly as possible, because the sheer volume of what moved can make it feel like chaos, like a series of intense experiences that arrived without a unifying purpose. There was a unifying purpose. Every piece of it was part of a precision restructuring. The illusions that burned away were taking up the space where genuine things need to live. The wound that came into the light was the specific wound that, left in the dark, would have prevented you from fully receiving what May is bringing. The connections that clarified, the ones that confirmed, and the ones that completed were the karmic sorting that cleared the relational field for what is actually aligned. The architecture that changed when Uranus entered Gemini changed specifically the territory where the next chapter of your life has to be built. It was not random. Every single piece of April was targeted at the specific, foundational, needs to change before what comes next can arrive aspects of your life. You are not the same person who started April. That is not a figure of speech. The internal restructuring that this month accomplished is real. The wounds that were cleared have less governance over your choices. The patterns that were burned through have less automaticity. The channels that opened with Uranus and Gemini are part of the landscape of your life now in a way they were not 30 days ago. The love account that was settled with Venus on the karmic nodes has changed the frequency you are broadcasting. You are materially different, built differently, carrying less of what was weighing you down and more of the genuine clarity that came through the pressure of the month. And the thing about May that changes everything is this: May was designed for who you became in April, not for who you were when the month started. May is the month of receiving. After a month of releasing, clearing, burning through, and restructuring, May is where the receiving begins. Not as a vague spiritual promise about future abundance, as the concrete, tangible, shows up in your actual circumstances arrival of what April's restructuring made room for. The connections that were activated in April, through the Venus-Jupiter opening, through the Venus node delivery, through the Uranus and Gemini channels, those connections are going to develop in May. They're going to take steps forward. They are going to produce the first visible evidence of what they are, which is the evidence that was needed before you could fully engage with them. The person who showed up in April in a way that felt significant is going to show up again in May in a way that confirms the significance. The connection that arrived in the first wave of Uranus in Gemini energy is going to deepen in May in the way that new, electrically recognized connections deepen when the circumstances allow their frequency to develop. The abundance that was seeded in April, through the honest choices, through the integrity maintained under pressure, through the Saturn account being settled, through the karmic nodes delivering what was earned, that abundance is going to begin showing up in May in forms you can see and touch and use. Not all at once, not overnight, but in the steady, accumulating, compounding way of things that have had their foundations properly laid and are now ready to build visibly from those foundations. The purpose that has been assembling itself, the creative work, the professional direction, the specific expression of what you are here to do that the Uranus and Gemini opening has made suddenly, radically more available, is going to find its form in May. The channels that opened are going to carry actual content through them. The expression that was held back by the old architecture has the new architecture now, and May is where it begins to move through it. And the peace, the specific, deep, hard-won peace that comes from having moved through something difficult and come out the other side clearer and more genuinely yourself than you were when you entered, that peace is available in May in a way it was not available in April. The intensity has moved through. What remains is the clarity it produced. May is where you get to live from that clarity rather than through the pressure that was producing it. The most consequential choice available to you at the threshold of May, more consequential than any external decision or action, is the quality of state you bring with you across the threshold. Because May's receiving is not passive. It does not simply deposit what you earned into your account while you sleep. It requires you to be in the receiving posture, open, expectant, genuinely available for what is trying to arrive. And the specific risk at the transition from April to May is the one that intense months always generate: the carryover of April's posture into May's energy. The still bracing quality of someone who has been through a lot and has learned, through experience, to expect more difficulty rather than to expect the shift that has genuinely occurred. The contracted, self-protective, waiting for the next hard thing state that April's intensity trained into you as a reasonable response to conditions that have now changed. May is not more April. The energy has genuinely shifted. What is coming in May is not more pressure and more release and more burning through of what doesn't serve. It is the arrival of what the pressure and the release and the burning through were making room for. The person who enters May with April's posture, still bracing, still contracted, still in the defensive crouch that served them well through the intensity, delays their own receiving by applying last month's appropriate response to this month's completely different conditions. Enter May with the open hands of someone who has done something significant and knows it, with the expectant quality of someone who understands that the difficulty was not the whole story, it was the first chapter. With the genuine, grounded, I have earned this receptivity of someone who made it through something real and is ready for the real things that were always waiting on the other side of it. You made it through April. I want you to let that land as the significant, non-trivial, genuinely worthy of acknowledgement thing that it is. You moved through Mars conjunct Neptune and burned the illusions without closing your heart. You let Chiron bring the wound into the light without running from what it showed you. You stayed open through the Mars-Saturn removals, even when what was removed felt like loss. You received the Venus-Jupiter opening when it came. You were present for the Uranus and Gemini ingress, one of the most significant cosmic events of the decade, and you let it change the architecture of what is possible for you. You stayed open through the Venus node deliveries and let what was earned actually arrive. You did all of that in 30 days, while functioning, while continuing to show up, while carrying the weight of the intensity without the luxury of someone fully understanding what you were moving through. That is not a small thing. That is an extraordinary thing. And it produced an extraordinary result. A version of you that is genuinely, materially, measurably more ready for what comes next than the version who began April. More healed, more clear, more open, more aligned, more genuinely available for the specific things that May is bringing. The connections, the abundance, the purpose, the peace, the recognition, the finally being met by life quality that has been approaching for a long time and that required the April you just completed before it could fully arrive. May is the universe's answer to everything April asked of you and everything you gave. It is the receiving chapter, the building chapter, the visible evidence of what was prepared chapter. And it is available to you right now, at its beginning, with the full force of what was restructured in April behind it. Enter it open. Enter it expectant. Enter it as the person who made it through April and knows what that cost and knows what it built. What you earned is already on its way. And the life that April was restructuring you toward is beginning to arrive in the real, tangible, shows up in your actual circumstances form of May. Stay open. You did the work. Now receive what the work produced.